Welcome to Secret Lens History. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more exciting stories from the past. Harry S. Truman, photographed in 1918 while serving as a captain during World War I. Before becoming president, he led an artillery battery in France, known for standing firm under heavy fire at the Battle of Saint-Mihiel, where his leadership kept his men from retreating. A baseball team formed from death row inmates in 1910. Their executions were postponed as long as they kept winning games, making every pitch and every swing a desperate fight to stay alive for just a little longer. A man exercising on a rowing machine in the gym aboard the RMS Titanic in 1912. The Titanic's gym was a luxury feature for first-class passengers, offering cutting-edge machines, just days before the ship's fatal collision with an iceberg. A girl holds her mother's hand while rushing to school in Belfast during the Holy Cross dispute of 2001. Protected by a heavily armed RUC officer, she passed through angry crowds who shouted, spat, and hurled objects as daily life turned into a gauntlet of fear. George McLaurin in 1948, the first African-American admitted to the University of Oklahoma. Forced by law to sit apart from white students, he studied in isolation, yet persevered and earned his doctorate, paving the way for the civil rights movement in education. A beggar running beside the carriage of King George V in London, 1920. In the shadow of royal wealth, this image highlights the harsh poverty faced by many after World War I, when thousands struggled just to survive in the streets of Britain's capital. On April 12, 1961, Yuri Gagarin became the first human to journey into space. His single orbit of Earth lasted 108 minutes, a moment that stunned the world and marked the dawn of the space age, with Gagarin instantly becoming a global hero. Before his rise to fame, reggae artist Shaggy served in the U.S. Marines. In 1991, he was photographed holding a football in uniform, years before his hit songs, showing a very different side of the man who would become an international star. Bosnian Muslim refugees arriving at New York's JFK Airport in 1993. Fleeing the brutal war and ethnic cleansing in the Balkans, many families arrived with little more than hope, beginning new lives far from the devastation they left behind. The Statue of Liberty, seen in Paris in 1886, before being shipped across the Atlantic as a gift from France to the United States. Disassembled into 350 pieces and packed into crates, it was reassembled in New York to become one of America's most enduring symbols. The Yugoslav shipping line Jugolinija, with the Twin Towers rising in the background during the 1980s. The towers stood as global icons of commerce, while ships like these carried Yugoslavia's trade across the world during its final years before collapse. Dorothy Counts, walking to Harry Harding High School in Charlotte, North Carolina, on September 4, 1957. As one of the first black students to integrate the school, she endured jeers, insults, and physical harassment from the crowd, standing alone with extraordinary courage. A photograph taken by George N. Barnard in 1864 showing a slave trader's business on Whitehall Street in Atlanta. Near the doorway stands a United States Colored Troops infantryman, a striking contrast between the brutal history of slavery and the fight for freedom. Willis Wynn, photographed in 1936 holding the horn once used to summon enslaved people to work. An ex-slave himself, Wynn lived to see the legacy of slavery recorded, his image preserving the memory of voices long silenced. During Prohibition in 1924, moonshiners wore cow shoes to disguise their footprints while transporting illegal liquor through forests and backroads. These clever contraptions show how far people went to evade the law while risking life and liberty. A late 1970s view of the Twin Towers from Manhattan's West Side Highway, long before the highway was demolished. An NYPD car is in the frame, offering a snapshot of everyday city life against the backdrop of one of the world's most iconic skylines. Stevie Wonder visiting a school for blind children in London around 1970. The artist's presence brought joy and inspiration as he connected with students who shared his world and love of music, demonstrating empathy and humanity beyond fame. In 1926, Henry Ford announced the 8-hour, 5-day work week in his factories, a radical change that reshaped labor practices in America. This decision influenced workers' rights and the development of modern industrial society. A Russian Orthodox priest photographed in 1901 wearing deerskin. The image captures traditional frontier clothing and regional customs at the turn of the century, offering a rare glimpse into the daily life and religious traditions of remote communities. 21-year-old Angela Kastner with her soon-to-be husband Ulrich Merkel in 1975. Long before she became Chancellor of Germany, this photograph shows a personal human side to the future world leader. 3 young Russian women and a little girl, recently liberated from a Nazi slave labor camp, lay flowers at the graves of 4 American soldiers on April 18, 1945, in Hilden, Germany. The act symbolizes both mourning and gratitude at the end of a devastating war. A man in 1930s England literally wears his curriculum vitae to a job fair. The image illustrates the extreme lengths people went to during the Great Depression to attract employers' attention and secure employment in a harsh economic climate. Mount St. Helens erupting on May 17, 1980, and 4 months later. The before and after images reveal the dramatic, destructive power of the volcano, reshaping the landscape and devastating communities in Washington state. Delivering bread during the Irish Civil War in the 1920s. These scenes capture civilians and volunteers risking danger to provide essential sustenance amid armed conflict and societal chaos. Shipping on the Suez Canal around 1880, illustrating the rise of global trade and maritime engineering. These vessels carried goods across continents and helped define the modern interconnected world. Troops of the Allied nations in April 1919, intervening in the Russian Civil War in support of the White Army against Bolshevik forces. The photograph reflects the international stakes and turbulence following World War I. Said Mir Muhammad Alim Khan, photographed in 1911, the last ruling descendant of Genghis Khan's empire. His image represents the end of a historic lineage and the transformation sweeping Central Asia in the early 20th century. An East German soldier passes a flower through the Berlin Wall before its fall in 1989, a small symbolic gesture of peace and human connection in the shadow of one of the Cold War's most notorious divisions. Rail commuters in California during the 1918 influenza pandemic wearing white protective masks. One message reads, "Wear a mask or go to jail," reflecting the tension between public health measures and personal freedom during a deadly global outbreak. JFK and a young Bill Clinton greeting each other at the White House in 1963. This image captures a meeting between 2 future presidents at a time when both were still building their political paths. James Brock, manager of the Monson Motor Lodge, pours muriatic acid into the pool on June 18, 1964, to force black swimmers out. This shocking act highlights the brutal realities of segregation in the American South during the Civil Rights era. The last living thylacine yawns in captivity at Hobart Zoo, Tasmania, 1933. This image marks the extinction of the species, serving as a haunting reminder of human impact on wildlife. Barack and Michelle Obama on their wedding day in 1992, a private celebration before the couple entered public life, offering a glimpse of personal joy that would precede their historic political partnership. A Leningrad gas mask drill in 1939, showing civilians practicing for potential chemical attacks. These exercises reflect the tense global climate on the eve of World War II and the pervasive fear of modern warfare. Stephen Hawking with his first wife Jane in the 1960s, before he became one of the most renowned theoretical physicists in history. This image captures a personal moment of youth and partnership, long before his groundbreaking work on black holes and cosmology brought him global fame. Harrison Ford, photographed in 1970 while working as a carpenter, years before he became a Hollywood icon. This image shows the actor in his ordinary life, holding tools instead of a lightsaber or a blaster, a stark contrast to the fame that awaited him. A bleeding reporter interviews a wounded activist during the violent breakup of anti-war demonstrations at the 1968 Democratic National Convention in Chicago. The photo illustrates the chaos and brutality of that night, highlighting the extreme tensions between authorities and citizens in a turbulent era. Elvis Presley comforts his father following the death of his mother in 1958. A deeply human moment of grief for the young performer, showing vulnerability behind the public persona that would soon captivate millions worldwide. Women protest against forced hijab rules in Iran, 1979, just after the revolution. Their courage and defiance captured the early tensions between individual freedom and newly imposed regulations, a symbol of resistance that reverberates decades later. An anti-Nazi demonstration in Berlin in 1932. Citizens gathered in the streets to oppose the rising tide of fascism, risking arrest and violence as political tensions surged in the final days of the Weimar Republic. Jean Bedel Bokassa, during his coronation ceremony as Emperor Bokassa I in the Central African Republic, 1977. The extravagantly lavish event consumed a third of the nation's annual budget, a stark illustration of the ruler's megalomania amid widespread poverty. African American flood victims line up to receive food and clothing from a Red Cross relief station in 1940, ironically in front of a billboard claiming, "World's highest standard of living, there's no way like the American way." The photo exposes the stark contrast between propaganda and lived reality. A lamplighter in Glasgow, Scotland, 1955, ignites a gas lamp on a quiet street. The image preserves the fading tradition of gaslighting in cities, evoking an era of slower-paced, intimate urban life before full electrification. The Tolland Man, a Danish bog body who died around 4 years before the birth of Christ. Discovered in 1950 and exceptionally well preserved by layers of peat, his remains provide rare insight into ritualistic practices and daily life in Iron Age Europe. Otto von Bismarck on his deathbed, July 30th, 1898. The photograph captures the final hours of the Iron Chancellor, whose political maneuvers had shaped Germany and Europe for decades, bringing a personal, human perspective to a towering historical figure. Japanese college students relocated to internment camps in Sacramento, California, 1942. The forced displacement reflects the fear, prejudice, and loss experienced by Japanese Americans during World War II, with profound long-term consequences for families and communities. President George W. Bush aboard Air Force One after the September 11, 2001 attacks. The image captures the weight of sudden crisis leadership as the world watched the United States respond to an unprecedented terrorist attack. A young North Vietnamese soldier lights a cigarette for an elderly man at a graveyard in Hanoi, 1970. Both men had lost a leg in the war, and the grave nearby marks 45 students killed by American bombs in 1965, a poignant reminder of the human cost of conflict. In March 1925, a massive fire swept through Madame Tussauds Wax Museum in London, reducing hundreds of lifelike figures to grotesque, melted forms. Flames rose nearly 50 feet into the air as wax statues of royalty, politicians, and criminals collapsed into puddles. Remarkably, no one was killed, and because many original molds survived, the museum was rebuilt and triumphantly reopened in 1928. If you enjoyed exploring these incredible snapshots of history, don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next adventure.